Hair, Love, Radio.
You're listening to Hair Love Radio, where we get into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to make your dreams a reality, start unlocking your potential, and live your best life, helping hairstylists, creatives, and girl bosses spread their awesome and light like confetti. You were made for awesome. Hi, welcome back to Hair Love Radio. I'm your host, Elizabeth Faye. Today is an exciting day because today is the first day of our series. We are doing an entire week of free education online. So we've been doing Instagram lives and Facebook lives, and we are doing this to celebrate my coaching program, Workshop in a Box. Enrollment opens up twice a year. This is a program for hairstylists who are dreamers, and they are ready to put the hard work in that it takes to really build the business of their dreams and make their passion their paycheck. So we're super excited to be getting into this, and we are starting this series with one of my really good friends, Cassandra Platinum, and we're talking all about how to avoid burnout in your career, which is an awesome episode for creative entrepreneurs as a whole, but this is really being catered to hairstylists today, but truly applies to any field that is creative. If you have any questions about Workshop in a Box, feel free to email us or our team or DM me at any time. I'm really happy to help you guys with anything. The doors will close on enrollment on December 8th, so be sure to check it out, theworkshopinabox.com, and let's get into today's episode. For those of you guys who don't know, we are celebrating the opening of our coaching program, Workshop in a Box, by doing a free week of webinars with our favorite people in the business and money industry. So the first person that we're bringing on is my dear friend, Cassandra Platinum. He's right there.
Hi. I just filtered myself.
I filtered myself. We're so great on Instagram Live. So anyways, Cassandra is a 2-time salon owner, and she is a Redken brand ambassador with me, and we've become really good friends. Oh my gosh, can we change the filters as we're doing this?
Yes.
This is festive AF. And she consults different brands and hairstylists, and she's just really freaking smart. And so that's what's really great is today we are picking her brains, and we are actually talking about a topic that I think is going to be super useful. So the topic we're talking about is how to avoid burnout as a hairdresser or a creative entrepreneur. And so with this, we're going to kind of go through what we already went through on Facebook, if that's okay, Cassandra? Because I know we have different people tuning in. And so with this topic, this is why I think this topic is important, is in my coaching program and working with different stylists, I have really successful stylists who've been senior stylists, made a lot of money, own salons, come to me at the point of burnout where they're like considering quitting and leaving this industry. And so I just it shook me a little bit and made me think a little bit about what could have been done to prevent that. What are the symptoms that may have led up to that? What happens with burnout? Have we all experienced burnout? All of these things. So Cassandra's a senior stylist. She's been through been in a lot of different fields in our industry. And so yeah, you were saying earlier about how everyone has experienced burnout. So talk a little bit about that, like the normalcy of that.
Well, I think that that's one of the first things to know is when you get to that point where you're questioning things or you're thinking about giving up or things just don't seem to be making total sense. That I think we've all been there, especially in the hair industry. We spend so much of our time and energy giving to other people, but also doing things that, for lack of a better word, doing hair is ultimately a series of a bunch of small decisions, but it's also a little bit of guesswork. Like we're formulating and we're doing these things. So it's like, it takes a lot of confidence and a lot of wherewithal to stay present in that. And especially at the beginning of our career, there's so much to learn outside of school that it can overwhelm you sometimes and feel a little heavy. And so I think we've all experienced that. We've all experienced that self-doubt. We've all experienced that question, that almost feeling of like, which way do I go? Or we end up with feeling a little bit out of control. So I think that is first and foremost completely normal to feel up and down through your whole career that way. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's the evolution of growth or not growing. and we all experience it. It's normal. And I loved what you said earlier on Facebook. You were like, even the most brightest, brilliant hairdressers experience burnout. And like, we know that from coaching other stylists, like people you would never guess experience this. I have experienced it. My friends have experienced it. Hundreds of people I've met and coached have experienced it. So it's normal and it's part of it. So tell us a little bit more. You read an article that you were all obsessed with. So share that.
Okay, so this I found when I searched burnout. I just wanted to get a little like almost like outside information on like what it looked like, just reading about it. So I found an article on Psychology Today. It was actually the very first one that popped up. So the first paragraph like spoke to me, and I know you felt that one too. It says burnout is not a simple result of long hours. The cynicism, depression, and lethargy of burnout can occur when you're not in control of how you carry out your job, when you're working towards goals that don't resonate with you, and when you lack social support. If you don't tailor your responsibilities to match your true calling, or at least take a break once in a while, you could face a mountain of mental and physical health problems. I think that's so spot on. So spot on.
Yeah, no, we love that. We were freaking out in the Facebook group. I was like, yes, queen. I was bowing to you. So in our Facebook group where we're doing the week of free webinars, Hey Elizabeth Faye, we're going to copy and paste that because that's just so good. And I was like freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh. That's like why we have created Hair Love. And that's why Cassandra teaches the way she does. And that's why I coach, is because that community and that alignment with your goals, with like someone leading you to the water and people like cheering you on along the way with good education, like that is how you avoid burnout. That is how you grow through the different phases. Hello, everyone tuning in. I see some hellos. Awesome. So what are like the symptoms of burnout? Like what are the feelings you start feeling like before we get to, hey, I want to quit the beauty industry? What's happening there? And why are those things happening?
Well, I think ultimately, and like we kind of talked about this already, but like almost like the levels of burnout, I think sometimes it starts with almost a little bit of like irritation, and like there's like symptoms with burnout, almost like a medical condition. There's symptoms that lead up to it that you can pinpoint. So if you catch it, you don't have to go through the full force of burnout. But I think it's ultimately like starting to look at things and almost getting frustrated with things that have nothing to do with what you're actually frustrated about. I think that's one big thing where you're telling yourself this story of like, this will never work, or I knew that this was not going to work out, or I knew this was going to fail. And so there's almost this element of like nitpicking everything around you. And I think if we step back and we realize when we're doing that, that there's a bigger picture going on, that there is probably something else that we feel misaligned with. It's probably not the fact that someone didn't put the trash can lid back down. You know what I mean? Like, or something like that. There's something bigger going on, because in general, if you really put those things in the proper perspective, they're probably not that irritating, or they're not that big of a deal. It's just that we're out of sorts about something really big over here that we haven't addressed. And whatever that looks like for every individual, there are signs and symptoms leading up to that big, I want to quit moment. Like, and I think that when that comes from a place of like desperation or reaction versus responsiveness and thoughtfulness, that's when we sabotage ourselves. And that self-sabotage is so common because we lose control and we realize like, I don't know what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to quit. And we almost force ourselves into a position of starting over. And that is not necessary. There's elements along the way of being able to pump the brakes on those feelings and consciously directing our own path. It doesn't mean that you don't stop doing something. It doesn't mean that you don't maybe make a shift, but you do it with intention and presence versus feeling like you're doing it because you're losing control. Like what that article said, it said it can occur when you're not in control of how you carry out your job, or you're working towards goals that don't resonate with you. And to me, that's a big element of misalignment. Yes.
Okay. Someone just shared something. So beauty poor, I'm not even going to try to mess up your handle because I don't want to be offensive, but this is really great. So she said, and thank you for commenting, I left doing hair for the first time because of an inconsistency of pay. But this time I'm doing more to keep my book full and lack of education as well. Okay, I love that. I love that lack of education was what leads to that, because I would say on a getting started in the industry, there is an inconsistency of pay unless you have some unless you're like an hourly or something, which that I think is great and that helps with that. But most of us were commission or booth. And so that inconsistency of pay, which doing things to, like we were talking about, and we're going to talk about this, free resources and coaching, different things like that can help you keep your books full. So kudos to you. I'm so glad you came back into our industry. It really is a full, beautiful, wonderful industry. There's just some like hurdles and navigation, and thankfully we have social media now and like more resources than your brain can handle. And earlier we were talking about how important like community and coaching is, and why coaches can really change your life, and education and workshops. But there are these points in our lives and career where we don't have the resources. Like you just straight up like, and I'm like not an excuse girl. Like I don't ever feel like there's a lack of resources. I feel like there's a lack of resourcefulness. Yep. But like with some wiggle room, there are literally times where a $3,000 coaching program is not in the budget, or a $10,000 program, right? But I do think that there is enough resources that are free or very, very affordable to get you to a level where you're making enough to then invest on a higher level. And I coach people, 10% of your profit should go back into your business and education. So if you are making $100,000, you get to spend 10 grand on your education. Will there be times in your life where you are really trying to reach some big goals and you're going to spend 20%? Sure. Will there be times in your life where you're trying to buy a house, or you're going to do something and you can't afford to and you're spending 5%? Yes. But putting that money aside, that is what's going to keep the wheels oiled and rolling, and that machine running like a well-oiled machine, so you don't get to that point of like, this isn't working for me anymore, and it hasn't been for so long. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the way you do education, Cassandra? Because it's different. It's what you taught at Hair Love Retreat, and I love it.
Yeah, I feel like I made a shift. Hair Love was one of the first times I did that, but I made a shift to my education where instead of doing color classes from the point of view of just strictly hands-on or demo, because I teach primarily color corrections, I just felt like there's a lot of resources already available for demonstrations, hands-on, things like that. And what I found is that people really wanted to have a conversation about it. They wanted to ask questions, and they wanted to get down to the nitty-gritty. Like I had a couple comments that kind of made me think this way of hairdressers just saying, I just want someone to give me an answer. And I think that like when we talked about like pricing, consultation, things like that, people would try and kind of steer and give almost like these really PC answers, like very fluffy, of just saying, well, if you're from this area or you're from this, and no one really kind of came out and said, you know, if you were looking at this from a business perspective, you should strategize your pricing this way in order to make this profit. And I feel like there's been a really, I mean, just to be honest, there's been more lately, but a huge lack of conversation about salons being run like a traditional business model versus, well, that doesn't work in our industry. Like we really need to have these conversations and have these open dialogues about running it from more of a logical business perspective and less of an emotional place. And I feel like sometimes hairdressers, because we love what we do and we love our clients, sometimes it drives from emotion. So I really just took the format that I did for the first time at Hair Love, which was an hour of Q&A. Actually, I think I did it once in Tampa before. And I did just a Q&A segment. So now I do about a 3-hour Q&A where it's really just, it dives into the nitty gritty. Like it really goes hard into what's worked, what doesn't work, the successes, the failures, and just gives answers that hopefully can shift the mindset. And I actually I have one of my classes recorded on hblive.me. So Hairbrain actually recorded a business and a technical section kind of that class format, and that's available. So yeah, it's really about empowering versus maybe just demonstrating. It's really giving someone the tools to go out and make good decisions and feeling confident in their decisions. And I found that just having those conversations really does that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like this so often in my business, and that's why I read so many books and I hire different people to help us, is you just want to ask someone a fucking question and answer.
Yeah.
You want to be like, I'm going to do this. Where the fuck do I start? What do I charge? Who do I go to? What is the resource I need? What money does this take? Like, it's just like, oh my gosh. Sonia said she purchased it from Hairbrain. Awesome.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you.
Answer. Lomax Lex said, amen. I'm just making sure we're not missing. Sonia said, yep, there's no excuse not to pursue education with so much free education. Seriously. So use that free education to really help you get to a point where you can start getting into more nitty-gritty education. Yeah. So Beauty Poor said, I work in commission or hourly. One thing I would love different is more education. I love what I do, never can have too much education. Well, that is awesome. So I love what you said about pricing, and something that we do specifically in Workshop in a Box because of that kind of like, I just want a fucking answer, is I don't actually believe, and we're going to get back into burnout. I'm not going to like veer into pricing too deep, but I don't actually believe in like a where you live pricing. I believe it's like here space, like, so we go into how much percentage should be spent on what your hourly should make. So we have a formula for that in WIB, and you track it in certain journals, and we help you figure out your pricing, and we actually don't even price by technique. So anyways, that's a whole nother thing, but I do think it's just really like being like, okay, that's great, you love hair and you're really creative and you're wonderful at it, now let's make some fucking money and get into
100%.
So,
amen.
so we're gonna go back into burnout. So something so this is how I look at burnout. So every single one of us is a fish, right? And we start out in this cute little fishbowl in hair school or our internship or whatever we did. And what do fish do? They fill up and they grow their fishbowl. And then it starts to become uncomfortable. They don't like it in there as much. And if they stay in a fishbowl that's too small, they will get sick and they will die. That is what we start, right? So the symptoms of that are maybe they're uncomfortable, they're getting annoyed with how small their bowl is, or that food's falling on top of their head, right? And so all these things are happening. And what means is that's time to put that fish in a bigger fish bowl so they can grow and fill it up. And that's scary to leave that bowl, and that makes you nervous, but the growth and the experience of reaching your potential are so worth overcoming that fear. So what times you have experienced burnout? Will you talk about it?
Yeah, sure.
With what you're, or like, what did you do to navigate through that? Like, what was that process like? Because burnout's hard.
Burnout's really hard. I think if you let yourself get to the point where you stick with something too long and it almost like starts to like erode your soul, that's where like the burnout really sets in. And I feel like, you know, there was a couple times, like I said, in our other segment on Facebook, like my experiences of burnout really came right before a really big career change. And so there was a couple instances where I really knew I needed to make shifts and I needed to make decisions, but I prolonged them for a couple different reasons. Either, one, you know, was, and I didn't have a tremendous amount of burnout directly before making this decision, but I did the year before, where I was deciding to shift into really going into full-time like consulting and education and leaving the salon. That was a really big and scary decision, and I knew it was the right decision because of the and so it's one of those things where, you know, you sit there and you hang on to something because you love it and you care about it, but you really almost like are hanging on for dear life and you're hanging off a cliff. And I feel like there's times where it's like you got to just let go. And I feel like that's really been the symptom for me of knowing that the burnout was coming, is when I'm prolonging a decision that I know I need to make. Like, I know that it is the right decision, and it may be a scary one, but I know in my core that it's the right direction to go. And so I've experienced that a couple different times. One of it was when I, even as a hairdresser, looking and really doing a lot of corrective color. And I started to kind of get those symptoms of burnout because I was doing a lot of services that really didn't fulfill what I felt like my skill set was. And like going back to kind of the article that we talked about, you're not in control of how you carry out your job and working towards goals that don't resonate with you. And so from a stylist point of view, that's when I decided to specialize and go into corrective color, because scheduling corrective color and scheduling a retouch and scheduling corrective color and scheduling a haircut, that's so difficult. So I really decided to make a pivot and shift my services and focus all on that one thing. It was scary. It was a process, but I could feel kind of my energy just like tanking with every haircut I did and every retouch I did. And it doesn't mean I didn't do any of those, but I really focused my business on really catering towards those kind of services that almost like they created that level of fulfillment, and they hit my goals of really who I want to be as a hairdresser. So those are two times I can think of where really I was kind of burning out and at least on the path of pretty severe burnout. And I was also running a salon, educating full time, trying to maintain a full clientele. I've been, on my own for, the last 15 years of my life. So at that point, it's like you're running a whole household, and there's just, one thing stacked on top of another. And so if you really don't manage the situation that's going to cause you burnout, it can really crumble everything else. So the biggest key is to recognize it before it affects every branch of your life, and just pay attention to what's really causing that stress.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, that's so true. Well, and I mean, that is one that I've experienced myself as well, was going from doing kind of everybody's hair to just doing the colors I wanted to do. And that is one that I probably talk to people in my coaching program about weekly. I mean, consistently, because I would say most hairstylists, like the larger percentage that are behind the chair, their goal is to do 3 to 4 days making a shit ton of money, hopefully double booking with a wonderful assistant and doing the service they wanted. That is probably what I see 80% of the people I work with and help. That's what their goal is. And so that's what we have systems in place for. And that is scary. It's super, if you like let yourself spiral down that, like, oh my gosh, what if I can't make up the money? What if I lose more clients? You know what I mean? What if I can't fill that spot? I'm going backwards. And so I would say burnout and growth. So you kind of get to this point where you're like, I'm burned out, I need to grow. Sometimes that leap of step in that growth kind of feels like a step backwards, because you're like opting out of certain areas of your life that were like paying your bills or meant a lot to you. Or I mean, I've noticed this, I've like linked my identity to. And so it was like an identity crisis of like, no, do hair, I like, no, I'm Elizabeth Faye. I do everyone's hair in Southern Utah. Everyone who matters, everyone who, loves to have good hair, everyone who's an entrepreneur, this was this whole identity I built. And then I was like, do I care more about this big facade identity that really is not who I am? I created that. Or do I care more about doing what I'm passionate about and having a lifestyle and an income that fits my real dreams? And so letting go of that, and because I was burned out doing these back-to-back foils and platinum retouches, which are fine. People make a shit ton of money doing them and they love them. But I liked painting hair. That's what I wanted to do. There's no wrong or right. And so that was like a really hard transition. And it took a full year of transitioning people. And what was super funny is I never actually took a pay cut. I thought I would, and I didn't, because I charged more for those services and got more referrals, law of attraction, all of that stuff. But I love that you shared that, because I think that is just like a step of growth that most people go through, is either leaving a salon that's not a good fit, that is not fostering growth or bringing them down, or a negative environment, but they love their friends and they're worried their clients won't come. And those are like really valid fears. But also your friends will stay with you. They're real friends, and your clients will follow you, But I love that you brought that up, because that's like, that's what a lot of people are going through every single day.
Yeah, it's that element of fear. Like, that's always been something that I thought about since for early on in my career, because there's something about doing hair that like that immediate like learning process, like it's scary. Like it's scary to know if this is the right foil placement or the right weave, and you're really taking a lot of responsibility creating this specific look on someone else's head on like this movable fabric. Like there's a lot of like, really like scary things if you start really looking at what we're doing. And so I remember having a moment early on in my career where I heard, I think it was a business CD. I want to say it was by Robert Cromings, because I went to a Paul Mitchell school, and that would make sense if it was him that said this. But he was talking about fearlessness. And I remember just having this moment of being like, I want to be a fearless hairdresser. And I don't mean like going in and like, cutting people's hair like, crazy and doing all that stuff. I think it's more about like really being confident and like being led more by courage than being held back by fear. And it doesn't mean that you're not afraid of something. It just means that you give yourself the tools to go ahead and do it anyways. And I feel like that involves practice. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, giving ourselves the skill set of really developing true confidence, of being 100% sure, not necessarily of the end result, but 100% sure of our own skill set and feeling that confidence, and 100% sure of our dialogue and how we handle conversations with our clients, 100% confident in our pricing, in our salon systems, things like that. Like that involves a lot of work on the front end, but like you have to have almost that mindset from the beginning of like, even if I'm afraid of something, I'm going to do it anyways if it's the right thing to do. And kind of being guided by that as our compass of like our big picture end result and kind of the net result of our life, I think is much more empowering than looking at it and being like, I'm afraid, and you're going to hold yourself back until you're ready to quit anyways. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's like you either hold yourself back until you leave and you let things kind of get destroyed in front of you, or you move forward and you might experience some loss, but your net result is going to be a greater gain. So it's all about a choice,
Yeah, I love that. That's like, I mean, this is so cheesy, but it's just like, what if I fall? But oh, darling, what if you fly?
If you fly, yeah, exactly.
And agree, we second guess ourselves and make more mistakes happen. When you're more confident, it shows in your work, and clients will be more likely to come back. I love what you're saying. To that.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And honestly, okay, here's like a little snidbit funny story, like just on the topic of confidence. Oh yeah. Sonia says, I'm a salon owner. I live color correction, but I make more money doing traditional services. You got to buy her hairbrained thing. Does it talk about charging for color corrections?
Yeah,
that would be And Cassandra's going to have an ongoing segment on Hair Love Radio too. So if you guys have any specific questions for her, that's a good time to kind of get some nugget information on the radio as well. Confident. So just as like a snidbit, I shared the other day, I showed some hair accessories that I made when I was 16 that were like really shitty. And I found a wooden chest my son was playing through, and we were cleaning the house for the holidays. And I found these, I like got like, oh my gosh. And I showed my boyfriend, I'm like, this is my first entrepreneurial effort. And it was so shitty. And he was like laughing. And I sold these the summer before I enrolled in hair school. And it's what paid my tuition to start at 16 years old. And I made these accessories. And I got like a little emotional about it. And I like was thinking about it. And I remember thinking like, yeah, people love these like ugly flowers with the pirate skull in the middle. And like, they're buying that. No, they were buying into me. They were buying into my excitement. They were buying into my education, because I was like, oh, if you buy this, this goes towards my hair school education, and I'm going to give you an updo to go with it. That's what people were buying. They were not buying the ugly pirate clip. And so it's kind of that same thing with your confidence. If people love you, they buy into you, and they will hang with you. So ending with that, Cassandra, what is your advice to a brand newbie starting on his or her path into this wonderful industry or any creative industry, on how to, like, what are like the 3 things you would say to do to not go down the path of burnout? Go through them, but things that kind of keep the joy and passion alive.
Well, I think one thing that we've talked about a lot is seeking education. And I think the biggest thing to think about too is that education is not always just about hairdressing. There's education about finances. There's education about career paths. There's education about really just personal development, and not forgetting that side of it, because so much of this is derived from who we are as a person and our mindset, being present, thinking through things, that really like focusing on internal personal development and really getting clear on our expectations. And it's almost like, starting a business without a business plan. You really don't want to start a career without a career path. And it doesn't mean that you're going to stick to it exactly, but it means that you've got a clear enough path that when things come and you can make those decisions, you're winding around that path. You're not going off the path completely. And so having specific goals, I think, are a really big thing. And just kind of going in with that idea of that article, it says when you're not in control of how you carry out your job, that can cause burnout. Really finding whatever direction it is, finding something that really aligns with the way that you want to do your job, whether it's a salon, whether it's booth renting, whether it's educating with a company, like making sure that those core values are intact from the beginning, but that involves knowing what they are first. So I think that's something that I would really start with, is just getting clear on that. And I saw someone, I was way back at the beginning, they said something about salon owners dealing with teams and things like that are facing burnout. And one thing I kind of did before, just like knowing what we were going to talk about, I wrote down kind of a couple key points for salon owners, for educators, and for stylists, like educator influencers, because I think we all face different elements of burnout depending on our career path. And I think one thing that I thought of just from my own patients, and it's almost like, starting a business without a business plan. You really don't want to start a career without a career path. And it doesn't mean that you're going to stick to it exactly, but it means that you've got a clear enough path that when things come and you can make those decisions, you're winding around that path. You're not going off the path completely. And so having specific goals, I think, are a really big thing. And just kind of going in with that idea of that article, it says when you're not in control of how you carry out your job, that can cause burnout. Really finding whatever direction it is, finding something that really aligns with the way that you want to do your job, whether it's a salon, whether it's booth renting, whether it's educating with a company, like making sure that those core values are intact from the beginning, but that involves knowing what they are first. So I think that's something that I would really start with, is just getting clear on that. And I saw someone, I was way back at the beginning, they said something about salon owners dealing with teams and things like that are facing burnout. And one thing I kind of did before, just like knowing what we were going to talk about, I wrote down kind of a couple key points for salon owners, for educators, and for stylists, like educator influencers, because I think we all face different elements of burnout depending on our career path. And I think one thing that I thought of just from my own experience of owning and running 2 different salons in 2 different areas, 2 different teams, 2 different business dynamics. One of the things I will say that like really saves a lot of that energy of feeling like you're either losing control or you're solving that same problem over and over again, like my dad had mentioned in our conversation, is being open, fearless in your feedback and expectations. So being willing to have direct and open conversations with your team from the very, very, very beginning, I think saves a lot of that feeling of spinning your wheels or running into the same problems. And being really clear of your expectations of who belongs on your team and who doesn't, and in a loving way. And I think it's John Maxwell, they say, hire so and fire fast. And I know that may sound a little harsh, but it's not a great thing for the stylist, or a great thing for the salon team, or a great thing for the salon owner if someone's on the team that's a mismatch. And I've learned that the hard way. I've had situations where that I didn't make the decision when I should have made the decision, and it affected everybody so negatively. So that's something I would say for salon owners, and really set your boundaries from the beginning. Remember that as human beings, salon owners, hairdressers, everything, we teach people how to treat us by what we allow. And I think with clients, with our team, things like that, being clear about non-negotiables and what's acceptable really keeps things from turning into that one situation where it starts to feel irritating, then it starts to feel overwhelming, and then all of a sudden we want to quit. Getting those things kind of out of the way in the beginning. And then we kind of talked about this already, but being present with what's really happening, and don't drag our past stories or past instances into what's going on in that moment, and really thinking through what's really going on at that moment. So that was kind of my thought process for salon owners. I know it has, other application too, but just making sure that's then, because I feel like, one thing we've talked about, salons close at an alarming rate. Businesses are closing so much, and I think that's a lot to do with burnout and getting overwhelmed and not knowing which direction to go. And I think being open.
Most salon owners that I meet at stuff, they're not very excited about owning a salon. That would be, I think, 80% of what I hear.
I've been there. I love the businesses that I ran, and we were really successful, and I'm very thankful for that experience. But there's been moments where I'm just like, why did I do this? Because that's when, the overwhelming feelings outweigh, the good feelings. And I think that what I realized looking back at the experience is that I let it build up to that. And I didn't take control when it was small. And I think that really involves with stepping back and asking yourself some really difficult questions, and then doing the work of being honest and being clear and being dialed in at the moment. And it's easier said than done, to be honest, but it makes all the difference.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, just from like what I've evaluated from other people and like friends and experiences, that so the E-Myth is a really great book to read if you're looking to open a salon or an entrepreneurial business. Is that what I have found is we are creatives, and we go into this industry to be service providers and creatives. And when we shift into that salon role, you're really signing up to say, hey, I'm ready to take on the role of boss, and I'm ready to take the heat, and I'm ready to make hard decisions, and I'm ready to fire people, hire people, do what it takes. And not all of us realize that's what we're signing up for. And so you either step up to the occasion, or it's a miserable experience and you end up quitting. All of you are stepping up to that occasion. Really, like you were saying, setting the boundaries, lines in the sand. That's a whole nother level. Like, you need to set boundaries with your clients, your price, all of that. You add on top of that, that's a whole go into which will change, but I think a lack of that salon owners because we learn a lot. We were in it to do hair. We want people, other people to feel great, but at the end of the day, it's a business. It has to be around business. Feel good, but business first.
Yeah. I think that is probably one of the biggest shifts that salon owners can make, and it almost gives you permission to run it the way that you need to run it. And I think it's so important to bring proper emotions to the table, as far as like compassion and integrity and, passion and love, but they need to be in the proper place. Like in any business, it can't be driven by emotion or run by emotion. It needs to be, logic and reasoning supported by, positive emotions. And I feel like when the logic and the business sense and the business plan is driving the bus, there's an opportunity for profitability, and there's opportunity for it to be a viable living. And I think, that's one thing that's been a big conversation on my Facebook page is about licensure and cosmetology students and things like that. And I just think that as an industry, and thankfully it is happening, but it's time to just keep elevating. It's time to keep really bringing our business on par with the skill set and the quality of work that we do. Like, that should all be intact as a whole.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's great. Okay, well, you keep going, because I know you had some notes written for Burnout, because you went through salon owners.
Yes, salon owners. So, stylists, it was something very kind of similar, like similar principles, but I think it was really kind of thinking towards a client facing. Instead of, salon owner would be stylist facing, then stylist would be client facing. So being upfront with your expectations of your clients, I think is really important, and having that ability to go in confidently and honestly with what you need to perform the service well. And that goes into consultation, that goes into systems and communication, that goes into supporting your salon systems and really working together to kind of evolve and customize what needs to customize. I saw that really specifically when I, as a salon or as a stylist, started shifting my business to color correction. I really had to really like amp up my expectations, you know, and being clear with my communication. If, you know, if we're going to do this service, I need X, Y, and Z to be able to do it successfully. And so like, yeah. And I call it like honesty at all costs. Like you've got to be open and honest. And if it's coming from the right place, I found that people respond to it so well. Like clients, if you can look at them and say, this service is not possible because, and if you're coming from the right place and a place of confidence, I really haven't found the same pushback that I got when I was approaching it tentatively or nervously or unsure. So people respond to that. So really just being clear with what your expectations are as a stylist. Another thing that we talk a lot about is charging. And I think making your time count. It's not always about charging an exorbitant amount for a service, but it's charging the amount of money or making the amount of money that you feel like it's a valuable exchange for your time and your effort. And you're not in a position of feeling like you're going to cut corners, or you're not in a position of feeling like you're getting, you know, taken advantage of. I think that that's so important to really, to perform well, you need to charge enough to feel that exchange of value, because this is a business and that value exchange happens to be money. So that's a big part of really feeling confident and not letting yourself get burnt out. Because if you let that feeling of maybe being undervalued or underappreciated just fester, where it just spirals, that's another thing that can set off the path of burnout. And then not being afraid to specialize, really doing the services that you love, and evolve and strategize your growth as a stylist. So strategize how you want to move forward as a hairdresser.
Yes. That's really good. Little tidbit that's like, so in Workshop in a Box, the first thing we do is mindset coaching and then money coaching. And we do this before we even get into pricing, counting numbers, showing you how to run your books. Then we go into policies and procedures. We give you actual legal documents. We have you create it with us as assignments. You have templates. But the reason we start with mindset and coaching is to get you in the right frame of mind for the hard stuff you're about to do, and it changes the game. But one of the things that I super think is interesting, we bring in a money coach, and she comes in and talks about this, and talks about an energy. So when I get to, if I'm not return, it's off. It's like automatically wrong. And so that's why when people start their work, all of a sudden they're at their job. They just presented better. They just showed up better. They followed up better. They speak better because the energy is correct. We talk about that as so far as it doesn't always have to turn into money. But we go into like collaboration with people and what person. Talk about that where you're a stylist. Oh my gosh, it's Ricardo hair. Oh, I love it. Okay. Anyway, so that exchange of energy is off. So let's say I choose an adorable blogger on Instagram, and I want to do her hair because she is, you know, what I want more of in the picture, right? But making an exchange with her, we actually make people in our program set out the expectations, and they're like, hey, this is what you're going to get for a balayage. This is what I'm going to get in return. And that looks like 2 Insta stories, 1 post, tag, X, pay for product. Because if that exchange is wrong, that, like you said, so it's actually like, it was interesting when the money coach talked about how it literally fucks everything up. I was like, that makes sense. Like, it really does. Think about it. When you get paid for work to teach, you're probably feel good about it. You may have worked your ass 15 hours, but you feel good because the exchange was worth it to you. Your value and worth were met. And don't, you leave feeling off and bad, right?
Right. I think that that's a really important thing too, because as hairdressers too, we tend to take our creativity and our skill set. It tends to be driven from a very emotional place. And to us, sometimes placing a value on it is a really difficult thing to do. And I think really putting that specific thought process behind it of just being totally okay with placing a high value on what we do, because it's a lot of work. There's a lot of value to it. And especially like if you're in kind of a creative exchange, like even talking about like influencers, things like that, like really looking at the big picture of what the value exchange is and like feeling solid about it, not going crazy either direction, either extreme, like extremely low or extremely high. But somehow we've kind of grown up in a culture in hairdressing where those are really uncomfortable and scary conversations to have. And sometimes it's almost looked at like laying it out in a clear path is almost like we either are not passionate about it or we don't, it's like making it too businessy. Like it's like uncomfortable. And I think we all have to get okay with having that conversation, whether it's clients, brands, salon owners to stylists, things like that. Like laying something out and strategizing it and systemizing it doesn't mean that we love it any less. It just means that we care more about it being actually successful, and getting paid properly is a big part of being successful.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's what I'm snapping for how much I love that.
I forget we snap, right?
Yeah. So for those of you who are new to this, at Hair Love WIB events, we like snap when we love shit, or we do it in webinars. And for those of you joining in, we're going to be free webinars to celebrate the opening of my coaching program, which is totally badass and life-changing and amazing, but it's called Workshop in a Box. So all week I am bringing you free content from some of my favorite humans in business and money. And this is actually supposed to be on Facebook on Elizabeth Faye, but we totally had technical difficulties. I don't know what happened. So it's on Instagram today, but we'll put it over there, and there will be more tomorrow. We're meeting with my financial advisor, smart money, how to not be able to pay for your children's college, or not retire, or if you get in a car accident, what do you do? Like all these things that we're not preparing for, we're actually going to talk about how to. But back to what we're talking about. I love that so much. When you guys set up, that's so true. There's more creativity when there really are systems that are policy. Like, which is so crazy. Think about it. If you had a love life and this partner you're with, if you have like, you know, what you're okay with, your boundaries, and all of these things, you feel comfortable and safe, there's more capacity to love the person because they're loving you correctly. So you're actually able to be your creative, awesome self, love your client more, and listen to what they have to say, and all of that if you set up those. And Sonia, the Facebook page is just my name, Elizabeth Faye, and it's a page, but we'll have a slide up after this on our stories where you can get on a list and we'll notify you when we go live all week. We have some really bomb webinars. But, okay, keep going, Cassandra. Keep bringing that fire.
Okay, last segment that I did was educators and influencers, which I think that, you know, especially as an influencer, since it is a relatively new segment of our industry, I think that there is a lot of thought process that has to go into it, because even though it's new, it's like fast and furious, and like there's so much changing, so much going on, so like it's just exactly, and it's like we're all figuring this out as we go. Let's just be honest. Like there's a lot going on that we're all trying to figure out. So the first thing that I thought of was don't live in a state of competition. Like that conversation in your head of perpetually like comparing and looking and saying, well, I'm not as good as that person, or I should have thought of that, or, you know, their work is better than, like all those things that we tell ourselves, like it's so defeating. And I think that that is a place where we really have to just say, I love that about that person. I want to collaborate with them, or I want to get better here, and looking at his points of growth. And it's exciting. Like I found like the more I connect and collaborate with people, like it just feeds you so much. And it's like competition is, I mean, you're competitive with yourself. Like be done with like competing with everyone else. Because first of all, that cycle we will never win. Like because our mind is our own worst enemy in that regard. So don't live in a state of competition. That was my number one for educators and influencers.
Lindsay, love you. So it's our Redken Babe Linz.
Hi, Lindsay. How are you? I miss you.
I miss you.
I know, I miss you. We'll be out in LA in December. So. What?
We're going to be competitive together.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I miss you more, Lindsay. Okay, keep going.
I totally miss you the most. So, I'm just kidding. And then the next one was find your own voice and then find a company style outlet that matches it. So when you're looking to partner with brands and companies, finding something that's going to let you really let your individuality shine, where you don't have to make core value shifts to match, because if you chase the money, that never works. Like, you really have got to have that idea of like being your own individual voice. So that was my other one for avoiding burnout. And then saying yes to the right things, like having a big picture strategy again and being in alignment, but also more than anything, saying no to the things that don't fit. That's probably the scariest thing as an influencer or an educator, is walking away from things that are not in alignment, especially if you see an opportunity. Like, I've been in that position a couple times where I'm like, this is such a big opportunity. It's such a great idea, but it doesn't necessarily align with the direction that I want to go, or it's not something that fits my personal brand. Like, really being able to be courageous and say no to the things that don't match, it's really hard. I mean, that's a big one that's hard. And then the last one was just being okay with the ebb and flow of creativity, being okay with the ebb and flow of social media. Like, there's just so many waves of activity.
So much goodness coming out of your mouth right now.
Thank you.
Mouth sugar.
It's so funny. My friend, she's an influencer. It's Sarah Luhu. You met her, right? I love her.
Oh my
right?
God,
She's amazing.
Like a little muffin.
I know. I love her so much. But she made a point on a panel she was at, and I really love this because, especially in the idea of like influencing or social media, like, how many conversations have we heard about the algorithm? Like, how many? Like, a bajillion. And she said, and this was just like kind of a mic drop moment, she's like, we actually have no clue what the algorithm does. What?
Oh, keep
No, and she's like, Instagram has never published the code, so no one knows. And little known fact, she knows how to write code for computers, which I think is amazing.
Funny.
Yeah, so she just says that we actually don't know any of that. And I was like, that's so true. Like, at best, we're looking at patterns of behavior and figuring out what patterns work for our own individual personal brand. So, like, being okay with the fact that things are gonna come and go, and engagement's gonna go up and down, and like, you're gonna lose followers and you're gonna gain followers. Like, not placing your personal worth and value and on that. Like, I will be completely honest, I've had moments of legitimate, like, not like, oh, I'm anxious, like legitimate anxiety when my numbers have gone up and down, and like, I kind of hate myself for that, but it's true. And like, that happens, and I feel like we've got to stay clear and stay present on the big picture and what matters, and be proactive with our own brands and being clear about it, but not measuring the things that don't matter. Like, look at the things that really matter, and it's like the net result and the big picture, and being honest and authentic, and all those words that we hear that may sound a little cliche but are 100% accurate and true. Like, be okay with the ebb and flow of really everything. It's all going to come and it's all going to go, and then it'll come back, and it will probably look different the next time. So
Yep. Oh, yeah. All of this. Well, okay. I just have to hit on a few of those points because they're like so good. Like, I feel like, have you ever seen that episode of Friends where Monica's showing Chandler how to have really good sex with a woman? So follow me here. So she draws a woman's body and she's like, these are the erogenous zones. And she starts being like, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 7, 7, 7, like all. It's so funny. Anyways, you just did that on a business level. Like, everything you're saying, I'm like, oh, 7, 7. So anyways,
I love it.
Love you so much. I'm going to say hello to Emily Jones. We have some new faces, Amy. So, okay, one thing you said say no to the things that aren't fit. So the author of Girl Wash Your Face said this, and it's so good. She said, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. And I'm like, that's so good. So with that being said, I do think in the beginning of your career, you have to stay like, yeah, like, you have to say yes to some things that are like, okay, like, I don't really want to like assist you for free on a Saturday, but I do want to learn more and I'm saying hell yes to my future. So yes, but when you get to a point, we're talking about influencer realm right now, when you are in a position to kind of pick and choose from things, especially when it comes to pairing with a brand, it is not a brand fit that's a hell yes, it is a no. Like on your Instagram page, you are losing the trust of your audience, everything you've built, and you are saying yes to like a couple dollars or a post, and you're saying no to everything you've built. So don't. So if it's not a hell yes with brand fits, it's a fuck no. But like nicely, you know, like hey, I like wish this was a better pair, but unfortunately it's not. But I still support what you're doing. I just can't on to my audience, you know.
Just to speak to that for just a second with influencers, though, I have found brands are completely open to that level of honesty, like explaining that. Like I've not run into a situation where I've said, this won't work, but this will, or this won't work because it doesn't fit X, Y, and Z, and just giving a completely open and honest answer. Don't try and like skirt around the issue. Don't try and make some like weird excuse. Like if you're direct and you're honest, I've had more people come back and say, I really respect that. Like, that's awesome. And then if another opportunity that matches your brand or comes up, that relationship's still intact. If you skirt around it, or you give some kind of like BS excuse, or you just don't reply back to emails or whatever, like you just ghost them, like that's a bad strategy. But you can be honest. And I will just put that out there. I've been in that situation where things aren't a match, and just being clear about it, I think, is the best thing that you can do to maintain those bridges and not burn them down to the ground forever.
And you never know. That brand might come back and say, hey, you know what? We actually have a product that does fit this. I want to send it to you. And it might be the best thing that ever happened to you.
Right,
like,
exactly.
You don't know what's going to come of that. And it's kind of, I mean, I'm bringing it back to a love life, but being paired with people it's like working with your dream team in the salon, working with the clients you love, working with a brand you love is like so serendipitous, and you will market better for them and create really amazing, authentic stuff because you just naturally love it. So it's like you're only helping them and your audience and yourself, and you're really hurting everyone when you say yes to something that's not good to you, and you're hurting your future and everything you built. So,
and just to kind of go back to like our main topic of avoiding burnout, that's exactly what the mechanism is to avoid. And like that article that we said in the beginning, when you're not in control of how you carry your job, and when you're working towards goals that don't resonate, like those should be the two like measurements of, is this a right opportunity or not? Like, am I being authentic to my voice? Do I have control of how I carry out my job? And is it moving me in the direction with my big picture and my brand? And I feel like when those two answers are yes, then it's a no-brainer. If there's even a question or a doubt, then it either needs more self-evaluation or a hard pass, one of the two.
Yeah. No, I love that. Oh, so good. And then, there was one other thing. I mean, you said like a lot of really good things. Okay, so I loved that, saying yes to the right things. So I wanted to tell you, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And then, followers. Okay, I just want to talk about that for like a second. This is like my whole take on this, like being completely guilty of being stressed out about it, because I'm going to have a real moment. You do get a bigger brand deal if you have more followers. 100%. You do. I mean, sometimes there's this world, sometimes, right? You can get more opportunities because you have a bigger audience. Yes, those are true facts, but you can have a smaller following with quality content. And if you are focusing on building your personal business and brand and not worrying about building a following to hopefully get picked up by someone, and you pick yourself up, you will get those similar opportunities as someone who is bigger. And building your own brand is like the most valuable thing you can do. And so like really building an audience that trusts you, buys into you, you buy into them, you build those friendships. That is like better than any deal you could get with anything, because you're just really being your most authentic self, and you're building, it's like building your own clientele. That's what it is. And so, yeah.
I think that's 100% true. And I feel like, not only like just like numbers of following, but like looking at like engagement too, because I feel like, you know, sometimes we get in this whole like, well, I didn't reach X amount of likes. But if you start looking at really like percentage of engagement and the people who are loyally interacting with your brand, and like you really focus on what that means of having that audience that loves, respects, and wants to see your content, is interested in that, and like focusing on that versus like these weird arbitrary numbers that we've created for ourselves, like it needs to be over this or it needs to be this amount. And
Hey,
when
Cassandra, we've been on here so long, it's going to cut us off in 1:45.
Oh, okay.
So round it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All done. Focus on what matters. Don't focus on all the crap, and shut the voices off in your head that are telling you that you're not good enough, basically.
Yeah. Well, real life matters. Like, we have 1:30 seconds.
Yeah.
But like, the real shit that matters is your real life. And so my brand is Hey Elizabeth Faye. I'm Elizabeth, and Elizabeth has to come first, and that matters, and that will stop burnout and help prevent it. Well, Cassandra,
100%.
thank you so much for being here. This webinar was total fire, and we will be on Facebook the rest of the week with awesome webinars, and I will post Cassandra's information, different places where you can connect with her there. Obviously, I'll tag her on the story. And if you have any questions about our coaching program, Workshop in a Box, we break this shit down. You have an entire team of people who have your back, and all my awesome friends I bring in sometimes. So that's exciting. So thank you for being here if you watched it. Thank you, Cassandra Platinum. You are an angel in this business, and we love you.
Love you.
So have a wonderful day, guys. And we are happy to answer any questions. You can DM Cass or me.
Thank you. Bye.
Hair, love, radio.